Okay, so now that we got our fire going, we can do a lot of different things. We can purify water, we can cook food, and with all that smoke in my eyes, we can keep the bugs away if there is any. So how did that work? What do you think? Earlier in the video, we talked about how a fire needed three basic things to start and to survive. It needed fuel, needed heat, and it needed air. So this system provides all three. Okay? The heat happens with the friction. Okay? When this piece, the spindle here, rubs against the fireboard really fast like that, there's a lot of friction in there. That friction creates heat. It also, see all this black ash? This is wood ash. That's the fuel. As that spins around, the fuel ends up in that notch right there. It gets trapped. That notch creates the air, allows the air to get to that fuel, and a tiny ember forms in there. If you have enough of all three of those things at once, it'll form in there. And then, as you saw in the video, you could dump that ember into your carefully prepared tinder and your carefully prepared fire teepee. And the fire, once it starts, it burns upwards. A lot of people don't realize fire burns up, not down, because it's always going towards the air. So if you try to light a fire from the top of the teepee, you're not going to do so well. It doesn't want to burn down like a candle wick very well. Okay? So you always want to try to light a fire at the base of your fuel source. The air will take it up and ignite everything else. So the bow drill, as you saw there, it didn't take more than a minute or two to get the whole fire lit with this bow drill. No matter what friction fire method you use or you learn about though, there's always, no matter what variation, you always have the same three basic components that make it work. You have friction, two pieces of wood or other material rubbing against each other to create friction and to create fuel that'll usually sit in a notch. That notch, wherever it is, it provides air to the fuel, and then of course the heat from the friction. So of the dozens of different methods, friction fire that are out there, the components or why it works is always the same. Alright, so once you figure out one method, you can make other ones work based on just those principles that I just talked about. So a lot of people, it's funny, a lot of people see this demo and they're like, they come up to me and they're like, you know, I tend to call this stuff fire by fiction instead of friction because they don't think it can work. It's just a myth to them. And I'll tell you, when I first started trying to do this, it kind of seemed that way. You know, I tried on and off for a solid week when I first started to learn how to do this and had a lot of different failures. But by learning all the ways how not to make this work, I finally did learn how to make it work. Hear that pop? If you hear a cracking sound to the wood, that means it's dry and it's not rotten. So those are two important parts of this, for sure. Okay, so you see this piece right here? This piece right here is about the right diameter and it's cylindrical. It's fairly straight, it's not real curvy, but I can always straighten it a little bit more with the knife after this. So this will be our spindle. And this piece over here, I can break it, so there we go, is a little bit bigger than this, hopefully. Just barely bigger than this. This, if I square this off, especially here at the base, where it's wide enough to be bigger than the spindle, This will be our fireboard. This will be our spindle. So the next thing we need is a bow. Let's see what we can find here. We need something hard this time and strong. And so there's lots of different species of both bushes and trees that would work for this, but let's see what we can find. Okay, so to give you an idea how these parts fit together, we have our bow, we have our fireboard, our spindle, and our handhold. So this is how they work. Alright, the spindle, you see this burned side here? That goes down and hits the fireboard and spins like this to create the friction. So that has to end up downwards. When I go to put it in the bow here, I put the top end down in between the bow and the string like this. Then I wrap it around like that. It's going to be nice and tight. Pop it in like that. A lot of tension on this. If I let go of it, this piece will go flying. Okay? So, you don't want to let go of it. Handhold goes on the top like this, but we don't do that yet. Put the fireboard down like this. We put our foot, go over here so you can see it better. Put our foot on it like this, so that holds it down. Then we put the burned end into that hole. Handhold goes on top like that. See how this elbow right here is locked in around my knee to keep it from wobbling? If this spindle wobbles, it's not going to spin right. Okay, so I got to push down nice and hard and keep this spindle as straight as possible and start spinning it like this. Shouldn't hear any squeaking. Within a matter of a couple seconds, you already got lots of smoke. So that's one of the reasons I love this kind of stuff. Is there's always a problem to solve, and there's not necessarily a right or a wrong way to do any of this. It's just what works and what doesn't work. A couple tips and tricks to think about. Okay, this handhold that goes on the top here, I actually made this out of soapstone. Soapstone's a really soft stone, and this creates a lot of good down pressure on the spindle without creating a lot of friction up here. You don't want any friction up here because it'll rob you of energy down here. So you don't have to use soapstone. You can use a regular stone, anything like this, but you'll have to peck. You'll have to get another stone, a really hard stone, not like this. This is kind of soft, but you get a soft piece of sandstone for your handhold, and you get a hard piece of granite, and you start pecking like that, long enough, and you'll make a nice depression in there, just like this. Okay, that'll be a nice low friction handhold that'll last you forever. All right. As far as I think I mentioned before, the wood that you use for the spindle and the fireboard, it can be anything. It could be two different types of wood, but the key there is making sure they're both softwood. You don't really want hardwood. Hardwood can work, but it's a lot harder to use. Soft wood. So once again, Tree ID. Tree ID helps a lot with this, because if you pick up a piece of hickory and try this, you're probably going to be disappointed. It's not going to work very well. Okay, basswood. Awesome. Cedar, awesome. Trembling aspen or cottonwood, poplar. Pine will work as long as the limbs have been dead a long time. You can't have a lot of pitch or sap in them, otherwise it'll gum up the process. So just make sure you're finding dead limbs for any tree that you choose, because live stuff won't work very well at all because it's wet, it's green inside. Because this was just a demo to show you the mechanics of how this worked, some of this stuff, like this bow, I made this bow a long time ago. It's pretty fancy. You don't have to make something this fancy. This string, of course, is store-bought. I wanted to show you how this worked. Later on, I'm going to show you how to make wild cordage to make this work without a store-bought string. Alright, so that's going to be a video for the future here.